Yeah, they're not even like, they're probably in flip-flops and shorts, and their hair's all disheveled, and
Good. All right. I'd welcome everybody out to the city council meeting tonight. Apologize for the late start. We ran over in our work meeting, a few technical difficulties. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll have a invocation.
it is not. Doesn't matter if we talk into the microphones if they're
So
not on, right?
there we go. I was being all careful because I thought you could hear me. So I'd like to welcome everybody out to the council meeting tonight, where we're starting a little bit late. Our work meeting ran over just a little bit. We had a few technical difficulties, obviously. So I'd like to start tonight. We're just the pledge? All right, going to the pledge. Michelle Bagley's going to conduct that for us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Should be noted we're excusing our city manager, assistant city manager, city communications coordinator, the mayor, and Nicole. They're on assignment in Washington, representing us well and looking after our needs there. I'm told that they are watching us and will be grading us, so we'll do our best. Do we have any, let's see, item 1.2, any council disclosure conflicts of interest tonight? No.
None.
Any comments, recognition?
I'll just say that I had the opportunity on Monday night, after participating in the process with Sherry and Destiny, to actually go over to the high school and present some of the young adults of our great community with Butterfield scholarships that are presented here through the city. So it was those are the fun things that being a part of the council you get to participate on. And we have some tremendous young adults in our community, and it was amazing to sit there as part of that event over at the high school on Monday night and see so many of them recognized for their efforts in school, and for us to play a small part in that in awarding a couple of those scholarships was a great experience. I did tell them, because I was sitting there amongst so many that were being recognized for their strong academic achievements over there. I told them when I got up that if it was a good thing no one asked for me to disclose my high school GPA and ACT score, because I probably wouldn't have been allowed in the building with them that night. But we have some great young adults, and I appreciated the opportunity to be able to participate in that event.
Awesome.
Thank you. Sharon, anything? So we'll proceed to the public comment portion of our meeting. Just a quick reminder that comments will be held to 2 minutes. State law prohibits the council from acting on items that not appear on the agenda. So we actually can't engage or act on any of these, but we'll be happy to take notes and bring them up in the future if we need to. So I have one comment form that's been filled out by Ronald Mortensen. It's the only one I have. But you're welcome to fill one out and bring it up.
Excuse me, my name is Ronald Mortensen. I live at 5732 Cottage Row Circle. I appreciate the opportunity to address you in regards to the item 6.2, I believe, that's on the agenda today. If you humor me for a moment, in my current life, I've negotiated contracts before, and then years later, had people who weren't parties to the agreement come to tell me what the contract's intent was. And it was markedly different than what the negotiated contract meant with the parties who negotiated it. In regards to the community center, I believe there's a contract that was negotiated in good faith by people, none of those people who are now currently on the council. And so, but many of those people have communicated to you what the intent of that agreement was. And I hope that you'll consider the intent of that agreement in making your decision. I also would ask that, I think this is quite an important decision, one that we deserve to hear from the whole council before the vote is taken, not just 3 people. I have a second thought also, since most of the feedback I've been receiving is that it's a financial decision not to keep it. Tonight, you'll be voting to make the tentative budget public. I believe that as citizens, we should have an opportunity to see what the staff and the council has prioritized above keeping the city building. And that should be part of the feedback we should be able to give prior to a vote being taken. So my request is that you'd consider the intent of the agreement as has been expressed by the people who were party to the negotiation of the agreement, and that you would give us the opportunity to review the budget and review what areas you have prioritized above this so we can give additional feedback in regards to that prior to you taking a vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you. Do you have any other comments?
I'll fill this out and give this to Jackie before I leave. I'm Michelle Bagley, 6186 West, 13100 South. I'm here to tell you a story tonight. In a galaxy long, long ago and far away, there was a place where people could count on a handshake. There was a time when we didn't have to worry about the legalese of a contract, but we entered into a contract hoping that future generations would recognize the intent of those who not only gave the handshake, but those who entered into the contract. I understand that budgeting is really difficult. I also understand that there are a lot of priorities in the city that you have to meet. I think the most important thing that this council needs to determine tonight, at this very moment, is whether you believe in keeping a promise. The promise was made that the community center would be used for the community's future use. That intention was not to be sold to be used for something else, to build something else, to pay off something else. The intention of that promise was that it would be used for the community, perhaps a senior center, perhaps a place where 4-H clubs could meet, perhaps a safe place for our youth. Anything that would bring community back together, that was the intent of that building. Now, I know you're hoping to make a decision tonight. I would concur with Ron Mortensen that it's not only premature to make this decision, but there is information that the public needs to have before you move forward. And I certainly wouldn't want to have that on the 3 of your shoulders if I were you. I think I would want to wait until everybody was here to make sure that they weigh that properly. We have done a great deal of work trying to come up with a number of solutions, and I still think that if you gave those an opportunity, I believe that they could work. Give us a year or 2 at least to see if we can make it happen. Thank you for your time, thank you for your efforts, and thank you for your patience with us, and thank you for your integrity.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Voute, and I have lived in the city for now going on 16 years, and this is the first time I've ever came to a city council meeting, so just wanted to say I'm glad I have the opportunity to speak today. Unfortunately, I came into a situation last year where my son passed away by suicide, and I know that that has been a great deal of discussion within the community as to what to do, including Herriman High School and the things that have been happening over there, including involvement with the PTSA and through some community events you're going to have, including the one on the 17th, of which I am, been fully supportive of, and I think that this is a great opportunity to talk to the community about what suicide has impacted us here in the community and what things we can do in the future to prevent suicide. So first, I'd like to just invite everyone to come to the event on the 17th. I think it's going to be very informative, and I think it's going to help us to start to address the issues. A couple weeks ago, I went and talked to the principal over at Herriman High School, and he is willing to engage in a wider discussion, including the involvement of the city and healthcare and other people who can enable us to address the issue just in Herriman City. So I did not hear back from the mayor, but I would certainly love to hear back. I had sent him an email, and I will turn my sheet in to make sure you have my email. But I would love to help out on anything we can do to have this as a broader discussion within the community. And I just appreciate and thank you. And I'm glad to have come today. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry for your loss.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Johnson. I reside at 12827 South, 6000 West, Herriman, Utah. I am currently on and have served for several years our historical committee that has been funded and backed by the city and have been very appreciative of the support that the city has given. At this time, I have a hard time. What I want to speak on is, again, the sale of the community center. I would like to second what Ron and Michelle has said. All of them brought good points forward. My point is, I guess, just plain emotion. They accuse the historical committee of being the hysterical committee. And sometimes we do get hysterical about some things. But it is an emotional thing for me to see us sell away the city's right to use that block for the community in basic services to the little people, not the people that need a space for 50 or 100 people to gather like our new building provides, but the people that need a place for 30 to meet or 20 to meet, for family reunions, for all kinds of organizations, scouts, quilting clubs, book clubs. And most recently, I've been touched by the suicides that we have had. I feel like our youth and a lot of the little people that think they don't matter don't have a place where they can go and feel comfortable to discuss their desires, their needs, the things that are going on in their life. And I see this building that has historically, that square has been set aside to do that for over 100 years, 150. I've only been here for 69 out of them, but I can tell you that if we give up that right, I believe that we're giving up part of our soul and the heart of Herriman and why everybody came. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leah Church. I live at 5881 West, 13100 South. I came tonight to support Michelle and all those that would appreciate a city council who takes into account that a contract was made at one point. And if you think about it, if people are constantly changing this contract or that contract because they want to see something else happen, I don't feel like that gives anyone any integrity as far as if you wanted the city or residents to agree with anything else that you wanted. I feel like once it's been contracted and a decision has been promised, I feel like it should be honored. And I honestly think that that's what this all comes down to. My second thing is, those of us who've been in Herriman for a long time welcome everyone new. But we've seen a lot of our old town space. It's crowded and it's being used for other things, and it's not all the same. So I think that's one reason why a lot of the older citizens of Herriman are just asking for this one thing not to change, this one thing that we can have that we're used to, that we can just use. And I don't feel like anybody's asking for free money. I feel like everybody is more than willing to help pay for or try to raise the funds that it will cost to take care of it. And it also seems that the cost of taking care of this place per year is a little excessive. I know you need to put a balance in there and put some away just in case something happens to it. But I really think that if you guys give these guys a chance, their heart is in this project. And I think they'll do everything they can to pay for it. So some things can pay for themselves in other ways than just monetary. So thanks for listening.
Thank you. Thanks.
Hey, good morning. Good afternoon, I guess, evening. It's been late nights for me. Teddy Hodges. So I want to thank for the comments, not only about the Old City Hall, but for the event happening on the 17th, which you guys may not know, but you are part of it. You partnered with the community awareness group that we started just a couple weeks ago. And you guys have been wonderful. We were going to use your space, but we've outgrown it. So I know the city's taking this issue of mental health pretty significantly, and I appreciate you guys. You guys all should have an individual email from us to invite you there as well. I know some of you will be in attendance. I appreciate it. Monday night, I had a meeting at my house for a planning event.
Sorry to interrupt. If you could state your name for the record.
Teddy Hodges. I said it. I probably mumbled over it. Sorry, Jared.
Thanks.
So I had an event, just a planning committee meeting at my house. We filled it with over 45 people. I live in a small home. It was very tight, and it turned into more of a community therapy session, which was great because we had counselors there and we had licensed professionals present. But a space which these ladies are talking about and other members in the community are talking about would be ideal to use. That space is perfect for a community health program. If it's ran by the city, great. If it's ran by other organizations, great. But a space like that is very critical. I know that some people may say we need to find budgetary constraints and stuff, but we as a city should be able to hold that. I know that you guys are utilizing the money very efficient, and I speak that it may be premature pre-budget release to make a ruling on this, so I hope that gets continued. And I've caught the tail end of it because I've been pre-focused on this event, but I'm glad you guys are doing what you can do for this event and for future events, and I'm glad we have that working relationship, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Johansson. I've lived in this community for many years, and I find it to be a safe community of service, and things like that. I am supporting this issue regarding the Herriman Promise Foundation and what we're trying to do with the community center, because I belong to many groups that don't really have a home. I'm in the Herriman Amateur Radio Club, and we meet at the fire station, and it's very generous of them to do that, but when there's a fire or something like that, they should be focused on the fire, but sometimes we get locked out, which we just have to find a way to, so that's one of them, and I also belong to the League of Utah Writers, and we meet at the library, and everybody who's ever scheduled something with the library knows that it's not guaranteed. You might get it, or maybe someone will beat you. And anyway, having the opportunity to meet, schedule like for a whole year here at the city would mean a lot to some of these groups. And so it would, I'm probably not the only one who belongs to a few groups that it has this. But I think that Herriman is a wonderful community. It's a safe area. Lots of service-oriented individuals that I've met and worked with, and I appreciate all of the time that you have and efforts that you've made in previous years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have any other comments? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion of our meeting and proceed to item number 3, Mayor and Council Board Committee reports.
None. However, Councilman Henderson, the Mayor Watts and Council Member Martin just wanted to know they are they are participating electronically. So they are listening, they are participating tonight, even though they're not sitting here on the stand. They just wanted to make sure that that was made clear, that they are participating electronically in this meeting tonight. So they are hearing your comments as well.
Thank you. I'll open my iPad so I see their comments.
I keep getting
I'll give a brief board report from Unified Police Department from that board, and we're talk a little bit more on the work meeting later on. But we've mentioned in several council meetings leading up to this that we're going through the budget process with the agro organization as well, and we as a participating member have had significant concerns about the way our portion of the finances and the resources we receive have been handled. So we've been having some meetings and been asking some questions. We'll talk about these things a bit more, but we want to express our appreciation for the chief and his crew. They do a fantastic job. The questions that we've been asking have centered around are we getting what we're paying for as far as the number of officers, equipment, et cetera, which is governed by a board of 13 members, other entities that determine how much we get back for the money we put in. So we're having those ongoing discussions.
Interested to know all those.
We'll continue to have those discussions.
Well, I just want to say I appreciate your efforts as our representative on that board to continue to really work to get the answers that we seek as a council and representatives of our community, and also our finance director, Alan, his help in that. There's no one that understands numbers like Alan does, so we appreciate him being involved.
We have a great team top to bottom here to make sure we're on track. And I guess it's something to mention for those that are here tonight that maybe usually don't come or are watching, is that we are all assigned, we're all given assignments to participate on various boards to represent the city that are in addition to the job that we do here, which I'll fully admit I wasn't aware of when I rose my hand and said, I'll come and do this. There's a whole bunch of extracurricular stuff that goes into this that happens that kind of outside the public eye. I'd say this year I've spent as much, if not more, time on that board than in this body. So there's a lot of work that we all do, staff included, to make sure we're going in the right direction.
So I'll add one thing, just in addition to that. One of the opportunities I have is to serve with the Youth Council, and for the comments that were made tonight about the suicides and of these precious youth taking their lives, the Youth Council actually will be having a presentation tomorrow by a group called Quit Trippin', right? And these kids are serving these positions to learn leadership skills and learn to be leaders. And so hopefully the presentation tomorrow will enable them with some additional skills that they can in turn take back to the youth that they associate with and just the community that they associate with, to help give and build more skills and tools to try and move in a more positive direction towards our kids deciding that it's okay, we can accept challenges in our life and still stick around.
Thank you. As we move on to item 4, reports, presentation, appointments, turn time over to Justin to introduce our guests.
Thanks, Mayor Council. So tonight we're going to be hearing from our great partners from Salt Lake County Animal Services. They're going to be giving a report and then some recognition to one of their officers. So we were going to be hearing from Carrie Siebert, who's our community liaison, but she's feeling ill tonight. So we'll have Michelle Blue. I'll have her come up and give the report and introduce the ladies that are with her there. So. Clicker, it should be working for you.
Okay.
They won't be able to see it.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Thank you so much for having us. We're really honored to be here. My name is Michelle Blue. I'm the Associate Division Director for Salt Lake County Animal Services. We are your animal control, animal services, and I am here with Lieutenant Carrie Hecht, who is our Senior Field Supervisor, and Officer Melanie Bennett, who is one of our longest serving officers and also one of the liaisons for this southwest portion of the valley. So this is an area they're both really familiar with and love. So anyway, we're really happy to be here and just give you a quick update on some of the things that we have been up to over the last little bit.
Let's see if this works all right. And again, sorry, Carrie was out sick this evening. So the first thing that we wanted to call to your attention, and this is actually item 4.2 on your agenda, we wanted to specifically call out attention to our officer, Melanie Bennett. She received a very prestigious award of the Animal Control Officer of the Year from the Utah Animal Control Officers Association. And the reason why we were so excited about this award is this isn't something that we could have nominated for her for. This was a citizen who she actually assisted in the city of Magna, that she was just driving by a house and noticed that something happened to be on fire, and it was a lawnmower, and she acted quickly and was able to save an entire chicken coop just because she was paying attention and quick and prepared and really thoughtful. And I want to highlight that because those are the type of animal control officers that you have in your community that really care about what they do. They love their citizens, they love their jobs, and they are all just as quick acting and heroic as she is. So anyway, she did win this award that you can see that photograph and was honored at a ceremony just a couple of months ago. And again, she's been an animal control officer for almost 20 years, so her experience and skill level cannot be matched. So is there anything at all that you want to mention about your award?
No, I'm good.
She's it's a little painful. Yeah. It's a little painful trying to get her to want to brag about herself, but it's a very cool honor. So I just want to point that out, that you guys should be very proud to have this as your animal control association. The second thing that I wanted to highlight, which was a really notable instance here in Herriman just a few weeks ago, we had an incident where, again, Officer Bennett pulled up into a situation where we had a dog that was tangled into a trampoline, and again, she acted quickly and was able to save the dog. Luckily, it was a happy outcome. I didn't know if you wanted to.
This one was not on my own. Officer Olzak and Luritzen showed up on this call with me. And I actually called Luritzen Superman because he cleared the fence like a deer. I'm like, you know what? So this was totally a team effort. I wouldn't have been able to do it without him. And luckily we were able to save the dog. It had actually been hanging like that for over an hour.
Wow.
So we didn't know if it was even going to walk again. And it walked out of the vet that night on its own.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah. It was absolutely.
Thank them.
Yeah. No.
Big thank you to both of them.
We'll thank everybody. Thank you
Yes.
so much for what you do for us.
Yeah, it was definitely a team effort. So we're very grateful. We're very grateful for all of that. But and we are happy to use that as an educational opportunity as well, to remind everybody, if you do have these sorts of trampoline nets in your backyard, please don't leave your animals unattended, because unfortunately this is the kind of thing that happens. So anyway, but yeah, so thank you to Officer Bennett for that. So the other things that I just wanted to highlight that we've been up to recently, the first thing so far, we've had over 700 animals have found their forever homes through adoptions and rescues. Our live release rate for this quarter is over 93%. So again, 93% of the animals that walk into our shelter or come into our shelter leave alive, which we're very proud of. That second bullet that I just wanted to highlight is we have a new program that we've been that we've been successfully implementing, where we follow up with our adopters and ensure that that's going successfully, because we don't want to just send somebody home and have the animal come back if there's issues. So we've implemented a lot of training programs at the shelter. We're happy to provide you with more information on that if you're interested. And anyway, we try to circle back and make sure that it's a successful adoption. We have revamped our court-ordered community service program this year, and so we're trying to take advantage of people that need more volunteer hours, which saves you as the city money, because you don't need to pay for those employees. We also have a program where victims of domestic violence who may need a temporary home for a pet, we have a program where we can usually accommodate that in our protective custody program. The fourth bullet on here that I wanted to call attention to is our unique cases. One of the most unique cases that we've handled, and especially so far this year, is we had a hoarding case. It was not in your city, so don't worry. But we had a hoarding case where we impounded over 200 animals within 2 days, and these were snakes and reptiles and lizards and tortoises and lots of ferrets, dogs, lots of exotics, yes.
Oh my.
So, yeah.
That's what I feel like I should say at that point.
Yeah. I just want to point out one of the benefits of having our large, diverse staff that you all have access to is we have a lot of experts in our field, so that work for us. And so fortunately, we do have an officer who is a snake expert, a reptile expert. We have officers who are livestock experts and bird experts and a tarantula expert. Anyway, we just have a multitude, like a wide variety of experience. And so when these bizarre cases come up, we do have the ability to respond to that. So I'm happy to report that those animals were all placed for adoption, and they were all nursed back to health, and they're in great shape. So yeah, that was a very happy story. And the last thing that I just wanted to point out on here is one thing that we've also done this year is we've worked really hard to write a new ordinance which allows us to implement an advisory committee, and we're really honored to have Mr. Justin Edwards has been participating on the committee and has been really helpful. We want more feedback from the cities. We want to be your partner. We want your input on how we make decisions and how we run our programming and all of that. So this is a venue where we can actually do that. We now have a forum where we have the logistics for all of that decision making in place. So anyway, so we really appreciate his participation and you letting us steal him as often as we do. But anyway, we're very fortunate to have that partnership and get that off the ground. I know that some of these numbers can be overwhelming, so I just want to highlight for the first quarter of 2018 again, for cats and dogs, we're over 95% live release rate. That's at the bottom in green. For all animals, we're over 93%. Hopefully you guys all get a hard copy of this, but we're happy to provide it if you want to look over these numbers in detail. But we just want to provide to you and be very transparent about what happens to every single animal that comes into our facility, how they came into us, and then what is the outcome. And we also have broken it down. The second slide, this is specific to your city. So you actually have a higher live release rate for cats and dogs. You guys are over 96%, and again, over 93% for all animals. So you guys should be very proud of yourselves for being a no-kill shelter, for having that high of a live release rate. So anyway, kudos to you for that. And we did put together a further slide on the number of calls that we responded to, what our priority times are. We do have priority times that are listed in the contract that we are obligated to stay within a certain number of minutes for response, and we are happy to report that we're always below those minimum response times. So with the number of officers that you have access to, we're doing a great job. We're very proud of our response time. But if there are any questions on these, we're happy to address. We just want you to know what we're doing here in your community. So, And then the last slide, I believe this is the last slide, is just a little summary of what we've done for the citizens in your community so far, just the number of licenses we've sold, the number of microchips that we've implanted, and then FERCP is the CAT's basic vaccination packet for cats, DHPP is the basic vaccination package for dogs, Bordetella is the canine cough vaccine, and then rabies. And I just want to remind you all and your citizens that these services are absolutely free. The microchips and vaccines, they're free to every resident of Herriman City, so we really hope that you will all take advantage of them. And yeah, I think that is all I have.
Fantastic. Thank you
So
very
just
much.
wanted to, yeah, and these are just some pictures of some recent events that we've been having here out in Herriman.
Perfect.
All
Thank
right.
you. Congratulations, Officer Bennett.
Yes.
And I have to just note, thank you very much for the increased communication. Your liaison program and involving the city, it's been noticed and much appreciated. I think it's been beneficial for all of us, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
I just want to make a quick comment. First off, congratulations on your recognition and award. It's one thing to be recognized by your peers who see the work that you do every day, but it's even more outstanding when you have a resident that recognizes the effort that goes into it. So congratulations on that. And secondly, those services that can be overlooked by the majority of the community all the time because you don't see a lot of those things that are happening, behind the scenes and the calls that you go on. And but it's very much an essential service that needs to be provided, and we applaud you and your staff for the service you provide.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for your support.
Yep. All right, let's move along to item number 5, consent agenda. Any discussion, comments?
None. So I will go ahead and make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Second.
There's only 3 of us. Got a motion, second, vote. Clint?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. It's consent agenda.
Are we having them vote?
Oh, are they? Okay.
Okay, perfect.
If you can hear us, Mayor? Can we hear them?
Can you hear it now?
There we go.
Yes.
No. Yes?
Mayor, I'm asking for your vote on the consent agenda.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I believe that was
They
Nicole.
both said yes.
Okay. Thank you. So now we're moving on to item number 6, discussion and consideration of a resolution to adopt the tentative fiscal year 2018-2019 Herriman City budget and the amended fiscal year 2017-18 Herriman City budget, and request to schedule a public hearing on June 6, 2018 for formal adoption on June 20th, 2018. Alan.
Okay. You kind of just said it all. We're looking for an approval of the budget, which will make it public at this point. And as you said, we'd have the public hearing on June 6th. It is required by law to be approved no later than June 20th, which is the date we're scheduled to approve it at this point.
Which I have to say, we've been discussing it virtually every meeting for...
Yes, we presented it to the council originally on April 11th, and we've been each meeting since then.
And prior to that, we've had discussions on the capital projects and et cetera.
Alan, would you, there's obviously a lot contained in a city budget.
Yeah.
But if you wouldn't mind, just for those that are in attendance, those are viewing, as they, I know, are anxiously awaiting the release of this document to view on their own. Could you maybe just hit a couple of the I guess, highlights, the changes that they can anticipate seeing in the budget, so they know what's coming? And I will say that when this budget is released, you will find that it is, for me, one of the best prepared budgets I've seen in terms of the ability to communicate what's in that budget to the people. So as this document is made available for you to view, I think you will find, be very happy with the flow of it and the understanding that you're able to get out of it, of truly how our city budget works. It's not just a bunch of graphs and a bunch of numbers that you have to try and make sense of. Alan and the finance department, Tammy and the communications team worked tremendously together to put together something that, let's be honest, they put it together for the council to be able to understand it, budgeting for dummies for me. But it will be something that I think that the residents will find very, very beneficial to help them gain an understanding of what the budget is. But Alan, if you wouldn't mind, just a couple of those things that we can anticipate.
Well, I think originally I just kind of talk about the layout here. First of all, we go through in the first section of it and talk about our assumptions, how we came up with the reasons we've chosen the things we do, the economics that we're dealing with. We then have a summary of each fund of the budget so that people, if they don't want to look at all the detail, can look at the summary and see the summary. Following the summary, we have a detail of each of the budgets. And then we also have even greater detail looking at each of the departments following the detailed budget. So you can look at it at whatever depth you want. We are looking at just over almost $21 million in budget this year in our general fund. That's an increase of about 8% this coming year. We do show our fund balance declining by about $800,000 in the general fund this year. That's planned, as the council approved us to pay $800,000 for a right-of-way on Main Street from fund balance. But then as you look at the 2019, we replaced that as, and again, that's a planned transaction. We have a number of funds in the city, but primarily the general fund is the one we operate under, that all of our departments are within. And we are going to see roughly an 8% increase in expenditures this year. Like I say, the budget for the general fund in 2019 is $20,900,000. Now, as we've seen in previous years, our building permits are a big portion of that. We're sitting at about 42% of our budget is coming from building permits at this point, which we're working on resolving that and looking at other ways. But anything else you'd like to hear? I think that
My favorite one, sales tax.
Sales
And
tax?
that breakdown.
You know, sales tax right now, we're projecting it going up in this budget, as I remember, about 10%, but we are currently in this current year about 24% above last year, and we're seeing some great growth, but we haven't consistently hit that level, and so we've actually kept the projection a little lower than that. You know, we don't. 24% is pretty aggressive to try and do it. That's what we're doing this year. We're month to month, we're 24% up, and for year to date, we're 24% up.
The forecast for the coming year, what percentage of the revenue comes from sales tax?
Sales tax is going to be about 25% of the total that we. If you take sales tax and franchise tax together, it will be probably in the range of 35 to 40%.
And will you tell about how much property tax is?
Property taxes for the city of Herriman are almost not even noticeable in the budget. We are projecting this coming year that our total property tax revenue will be $670,000, I believe. Property tax is not an area that we get very much of.
I just wanted to make sure
I believe it's 2.6% of our residents' property tax come to the city. And for reference, the county gets about 9 times as much as we do. So we can't rely on property tax for any level of service.
Say for It's one of my favorite, well, I guess, pet projects is to educate people on this part of it, because so many people assume that their property tax goes to the city. Almost zero of it goes to the city. The vast majority goes to the county, school district, police, and fire.
Yeah, right now, we're right at 50% of our residents' property taxes goes to the school district.
If I could, Alan,
yeah.
I will tell you exactly where you can find it in this document tomorrow when you see it.
That's exactly where I was
It's
going.
page 17, and there is a great graphic on there that will give you the breakdown of property taxes. And since we're talking about it, I'd like to share that with you to help again with that understanding. But the graphic on here talks about the property tax distribution, and there's a picture of a $100 bill on there, and it's shaded to represent. And I'm going to give you the breakdown of where this goes. So as mentioned, 43.31% goes to Jordan School District. 20.93% goes to Salt Lake County. I'm going to go kind of in descending order here. Currently Salt Lake Valley Law Enforcement has been at 13.71. Unified Fire Service Area, 12.22. Jordan Valley Water at 2.70%.
So if I could, Clint, those four, Jordan School District, Salt Lake County, law enforcement and fire account for over 90% of property tax.
Yep. Then you get down into very small amounts. So again, 2.7 to Jordan Valley Water, 2.7 to Central Utah Water. Herriman City gets 2.2% of the property tax that's collected. That's how much comes to the city to help support city services. And then the only ones below that is the South Valley Sewer District, 2.13%, and then South Salt Lake Mosquito Abatement, which is 0.11%. So again, I would encourage everybody to go through the first part of the budget document as you see it, which is a great explanation of the budgeting process and the tax process and the distribution of these things. This gets to the point of what a fantastic job I think our staff has done in preparing a budget that it can be easily understood and help our residents to understand really the challenges that this body is faced with when we're making those tough financial decisions. And because we need your help. We need your help in hearing from you, but the only way we can really get that help from you is to have that same, at least a basic level of understanding of how the budget process works, and our staff has been able to provide that this year.
And what we have to work with. And I just want to make kind of that same point. I'm old-fashioned. I like the paper stuff, so they know to always give me a bound version so I can write my notes and highlight and whatnot. But this is what our staff puts together, Alan and his team, but also Tammy and her team, to make it understandable, to break it down into those graphs and explain the assumptions, explain some of the factors we're dealing with. In our budget, as Alan described, you can look through the summary, and then you can find the different funds, which I think we should maybe spend a minute on as well, and then how that's broken down by each department. And if we want more detail than that, I know I can ask Alan, and he'll send me the report going through that department right down to the last nut and bolt.
Yep.
That's so helpful for us, but also I think for residents, if you have questions about the budget, you have this document to go to versus other entities. So we just said our general fund is $20 million, which sounds like a lot. If you look through this, you'll see that it's not. And we'll talk about that for a second. But you can get all the answers you want in there. One of the boards I serve on, this is their budget. And I'm asking questions and I can't understand what's going on. Like, this is the work that our staff does is fantastic. So it's that transparency isn't there with a lot of our other governmental organizations. So credit to our amazing staff.
What you will see is from staff is a 267-page document to help you understand and help us understand the budget. And yes, for me, again, there's a lot of pictures and color and graphs, and that helps to give the breakdown. But to Councilman Henderson's point, I think long before I was elected to this position, there was a big push by the former council and previous councils for that transparency aspect, to be able to let the residents know exactly where their dollars are spent and how that budgeting process works. And again, I think this is a product of it. And I think Herriman is leading the way in transparency when it comes to budgeting and a lot of other communications in general. As you can see by the example that Councilman Henderson just held up, We see in some
This is
cases,
a $70 million budget that they put on one piece of paper for me.
and it's very difficult to dig into the nuts and bolts of something on, you know, an 11 by 14 piece of paper that's front and back compared to 267 pages. So I can't thank enough our staff for the work that they have done on this. And Alan, you've been phenomenal. Can you talk really briefly about one of the main things that we usually have to deal with in city budgets year after year is some of the increases, like health insurance, as for city staff, and we have seen a very steady increase in those. Can you talk a little bit about some of those increases that we have to contend with this year?
Well, when you're looking at employee benefits, like you say, health insurance has been one of the big changes year for year. We actually had quite a bit smaller increase this year in health insurance than we've had in previous years. We're projecting that our health insurance will go up 5.5% this year. We were just under 9% last year, and we were over 10% the previous year to that. So that's slowed up a little bit. Dental insurance is staying the same this year. Our retirement benefits through the state of Utah is staying the same. And that is, I believe, the fourth year in a row that the URS has stayed consistent or stayed the same. We haven't had an increase in the retirement fund. That they're getting a better return on investment at this point than expected, and so we're not seeing any of the increases there. But as we look at benefits, the health insurance benefit in the employee benefits is the only one going up this year.
So luckily for us, we have some factors working in our favor in the budget this year. We're seeing, you know, a strong economy, which equates to steady growth, increase in sales taxes that we've already seen, talked about, and fortunately not some of the increases we've seen in those benefits. And so we're fortunate in that we don't have to trim down other budget line items to account for these increases. But that doesn't mean, as you already pointed out, that we still don't have major concerns moving forward, because we are living on so much of that one-time money through our permit fees, correct?
Right. You know, and when you're looking at employees right now, the nation as a whole is at full employment. So finding employees right now is very difficult. Retaining employees is very difficult. And even though the whole country is at full employment, Utah is actually at a lower unemployment than the country as a whole, and the Salt Lake County is even lower than the state. And so the last figures I saw are showing Salt Lake County at 2.6% unemployment, where economists consider 3 to 3.5% to be full employment, where no one's looking for a job, you know. And so, you know, we're in a tough job market right now as far as finding qualified employees and keeping them.
And just to note, we have, I believe it's 8 new allocations citywide that are factored into this proposed budget for next year to help keep up with the growing demands that we have in our community. Is that correct?
Which means eight new full-time employees, right?
What did I say?
Allocations.
8 new, yeah, thank you. Sometimes the lingo gets in the way.
8 employees, we intend to fill them.
It's an inside joke.
Ellen, you mentioned there's an 8% increase in expenditures. Is there an increase in revenue also?
Yes.
What's the percentage?
We are required by the state of Utah to have a balanced budget. Imagine that, you know? They require cities and counties to have balanced budgets, but you get up above that and they can do whatever they want. And essentially our balanced budget says that our revenues and our expenses will be equal. Now, as I mentioned earlier, to make it equal this year, we're using a little bit of fund balance, which will then be brought back in the 2019 budget. But we are required in all of our budgets, except the only one that we have an exception on a balanced budget is our enterprise fund, our water utility, where it actually can make money. We don't. We price that so that we are trying to match revenues with expenses, but all of our government are balanced. And just to mention, you know, I said that our general fund is our main fund. We have a number of other funds. As most homeowners are aware, when they build a new home, there's impact fees. We have a separate fund for park impact fees, for stormwater impact fees, for roads, for street lights, for street signs. We have a few special revenue funds. We've got the community development area over here at Herriman, the Herriman Town Center, where we get tax increment money from, so we've got a special revenue for that. And that also offsets the debt over there.
Those particular funds have to be used for those particular
Yes,
purposes.
they have to be used for those funds. We're not allowed to use, well, take for instance, the park fund has to be used for parks, but not only has to be used for parks, it has to be used for the parks that are identified in the capital facilities plan.
So new parks,
New parks. We can't take that and use it to maintain a park. We can't even take it to build a new park that's not been identified when we created the impact fee. So other than our general fund, our funds are restricted to the fund that they're in.
So we can't move them from...
Can't move them and use them for other things.
Which is important to note as we go through this. I mentioned that the 20 million sounds like a lot, but it's not. Yeah. Going back to the revenue sources, the 42% from building permits, going to the general fund, that's money that can be used to pay for maintenance and employees' salaries, et cetera. And we're kind of, when it comes to that, we're living on borrowed money almost.
We are.
So with the impact fees, that money's collected for those particular impacts on the community, roads, sewer, et cetera, and has to be used for those projects in those areas that were identified at the time the fees are collected. Right. So it's very specific what you can use those for. The only discretion this body has is with the general fund, really.
That's right. Right,
for capital projects, for adding new staffs, 8 new employees, provide services for the city. And that's the balancing act. Is right now we have 42% of that money comes from one-time building permits. Right. So that's the impact comes in, we get that money one time, but then we have to provide services for all of those people forever. So what we have to do in a growing community like this is try to encourage, the way cities are really funded in this state is through sales tax. We have to try to increase our commercial development to collect that sales tax. The way sales tax works, and where I was going with that original question, where we went off on this tangent, was that with the sales tax, 25% of the current budget is received from sales tax. But how is that broken down? Most people don't know that either.
Well, when you pay your 6.5% sales tax, 1% of that belongs to the cities. So for every dollar, we get a penny.
But do we get a penny?
What's that?
But do we get that whole penny?
Not necessarily, because half of that penny goes to where the sale happened, and the other half is distributed across the state based on population.
So if I go to the Smiths on the north side of 114th, they get to keep half of it, or South Jordan gets to keep half of that penny because it's on their side of the property line.
And we might get part of it because of population, and we may not. You know, that's hard to relate.
So with our 25% represented from sales tax, roughly only 20% of that comes from that half penny that occurs in our city. The other 80% that we receive is from the state based on population. So that's the trend that we're all working hard to try to overturn in our little corner of the valley, which is a struggle in of itself. Just our location commercially is to try to attract more things out here so that those sales occur inside our boundaries, so we get to keep that half to hopefully replace our dependency on these one-time permits. Does that sum it up fairly well?
Yep. has to happen.
So that's what we're struggling with each and every year, and we are making, at least I feel, notable progress that I've seen the last couple of years. We'll see how things continue to go.
Yep.
Alan, just two quick last questions.
Okay.
Fund balance, where does our fund balance currently sit? What's state mandate and what is it anticipated
Well,
with
in
next
our
year's
general
budget?
fund, we are required to have at least 5% of our revenue in fund balance, which is essentially our cash balance, and we can't have more than 25%. And we're projecting to finish this year at 17.7%. And like I say, you know, that's one of the things you hear quite often is, why don't we just save up the money and do this project? The state will not allow us to save up in our general fund more than 25% of our annual revenue. They essentially want to give us enough money to get from the first of the year till property tax distributions, even though that doesn't really affect us, but that's the concept behind it. Beyond that, they think we've got too much and we ought to
yeah, the best example I've heard the last few years, which I'll preface by saying no one on this council, including the two who are participating remotely, voted to build this building. But the example I hear all the time is, why didn't the city just save the money to pay for the building instead of doing a bond? And that's the answer, is we're not allowed to save.
It's really restricted. The state does not want us to accumulate too much money. And so they've put a restriction on us.
So that adds to the balancing act every year.
Yes, it does. But I do want to say that current projected fund balance, or the one projected to end at 17.7%, represents, I think, very good fiscal responsibility.
It leaves us with $3.5 million at the end of this fiscal year. So, and we expect that fund balance to be 4.3 at the end of next year. So we try to keep it as close to the 25 as we can. However, that percentage changes every year as our budget increases. 25% becomes a bigger number every year, and so even though we're not really changing the fund balance much this year, it's going down about 5% because the budget is going up. So
I'm going to give just a quick example on the 3.5 of kind of the balancing act. Kind of 2 points. One, going back to the last recession, what did that decline to?
Well, for instance, we're going to have somewhere around $8 million in building permits this year. In 2009, we had $1 million when the economy dropped. So that's the kind of changes you can see in that.
So if we're using a little over 40% of that for operations.
Yeah, the fund balance we have right now is sufficient for about 2 months worth of operation.
So it might sound like a lot of money, but
2 months of operation
doesn't get us very far. Yep. That was my second point. I went off down that road. I'll come back.
One of the questions that I think, at least if we can point out to those who are in attendance tonight, who I think have brought up the question is in regards to the tentative budget that we're looking at tonight, next year, with calling out specifically the old City Hall. At this point, does the budget have in there funding for the ongoing maintenance, O&M of that building for next year?
This budget includes maintenance for the coming year. Until the council makes a decision one way or another of what's going to happen, we have to maintain the building. So this is budgeted to maintain the building. It's not budgeted to sell it. It's not budgeted to use the money elsewhere. It's just budgeted to maintain it as it is right now.
Which brings you back to my point. Thank you.
Did I help you?
Yes, it
did.
Good,
Excellent.
So the second one is that 2 months worth of operating costs is also what we can use to dip into for other projects. So when RSL comes in and they need us to help them get that started, that's the piggy bank, if you will, that we can go to.
Yeah.
The discretionary
6,000
funds.
West is an awful road and needs to be repaired. That can't be done from impact fees.
No.
That has to come from
It'll
this
have to
money.
come out of this fund balance.
And that would, I mean, what we had looked at, the estimated cost would pretty much wipe this amount out.
Yeah.
So as we debate these items, I've heard some people say, well, $100,000 for maintenance for the building is a drop in the bucket. It goes a long ways. We just beat up the Arts Council over $7,900.
Yeah.
Because it all adds up for all of the needs that the city has, so.
It's costing us about 7 cents a square foot to maintain the roads, you know. Doesn't sound like much, but when you put all of our roads together, you know, it's $1.5 million, so, you know.
So I overheard a comment, well, I listened to a comment, and I was at a conference the other day, discussing a very much larger budget than what Herriman City has. And the comment was made, it's very difficult when you're talking about billions of dollars. It's easy to say, it's okay, 100,000, or, oh, that's only $500,000, that's okay. And sometimes numbers lose value or importance because it's just such a big number, it's hard to imagine. And even at our budget, are we at 19 million, just about this year? A $19 million budget. I do not personally have a $19 million budget. There might be some people in our community that do, I don't know. I do not. But I do have a budget, and every dollar in my budget matters. And so when we lose focus on the dollars in our budget, we lose focus on the people in our communities. There's people in our community that have to have assistance for food, that have to have assistance for a roof over their head. So when we think about $100,000, it's no big deal in a percentage of a budget. It is a big deal because it's people's money. It's our taxpayers' money. The city doesn't generate money. We don't have a bunch of businesses that we personally are generating money. These are all money, you heard it described, sales tax, franchise tax, property taxes, building permits, fees that are assessed. These are money that somebody else, it's coming out of someone's pockets, our neighbors' pockets. Even impact fee money, we think, oh, those are builders' fees. No, they're not. They're the new homeowners are paying those fees. So all this money is coming out of real people's pockets. And when we lose sight of that and think that we're only making financial decisions make a big deal of difference in people's psychological. We're talking about people who can't put food on their table. Think about the emotional stress it puts on them. So financial decisions are real, and every dollar that we make of financial decisions matters. And I would also like to remind people that this hearing, when you read the action item on here, is to adopt a tentative fiscal year budget. There is a public hearing on June 6th. That means that we as city council people, we represent the people, and we're asking for feedback. If you have questions about this, why are you spending this on this? Why is this happening? What does this look like? Ask the questions. Be here on the 6th and ask those questions, because we need that participation from people so that the tentative goes to a final budget with input.
Or call us or email us.
Yeah.
Everybody that's watching. We definitely want input.
And
everybody has their project
and
that
my
they want
contact
done.
information is in the budget, so if some, or I'm on the website, but anyone who's got a question, feel free to. But I just make comment towards what you said there, Sherry. I can't tell you how many times I heard Brett say during our budget meetings to someone, you think that $10,000 doesn't matter? When I see them all together, it really adds up to things that we can and make things change if we take all those $10,000 and use them together. You know, he made that comment over and over again to the managers. You know, pay attention to the little things and they'll add up, you know. And that was something that Brett constantly stressed with the managers as we met, so.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments?
Thank you, Alan.
Thanks, Alan. I know we do this to you every time we talk about the budget. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, you're fine.
I'd just like to also mention that as part of the full budget that will be put out and available on the website for everyone, there's also, communications team's also going to be putting out basically a Cliff Notes version or a brief on the budget as well that will just highlight the key points of the budget. But again, I encourage everybody to take at least a little bit of time to look at the full budget document and the work that's been put into that to help deepen everybody's understanding. Is anyone ready for a motion?
Yep, go ahead.
I will motion to approve resolution number R26-2018, adopting the tentative fiscal year 2018-2019 Herriman City budget and the amended fiscal year 2018-2019 Herriman City budget, and request to schedule a public hearing on June 6th, 2018 for formal adoption on June 20th, 2018.
And we have the mayor and councilwoman Martin on the line, so they can second as well.
Second. Second.
Is that a second?
I think that was a second from Nicole.
All right.
Yes, Nicole seconded that. That's right.
There you go. Call for the vote. Nicole.
Yes.
Mayor.
Yeah.
Clint.
Yes.
Sherry.
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. The motion passes. We will proceed to item number 6.2, discussion and consideration of an ordinance declaring Herriman Community Center located at 13011 South Pioneer Street as surplus. Establish a minimum bid and establish a method to determine the highest and best economic return to the city. Monty.
Mayor and council, thank you for your time tonight. This item was continued from the last meeting on April 18th. It was requested that we bring it before you again tonight. We've had quite a bit of discussion on this. We've had multiple presentations. And so with that, I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions?
I don't have any questions of you, Monty.
I don't think so. I don't think so for Monty. Thank you.
I'll ask one quick one, and it's more rhetorical. We've asked the question many times. The numbers that we've gone over several times for operations and maintenance, and I actually made the assumption early on in this process that those numbers were inflated in accounting for catastrophic failure of roof and pavement and all of those sorts of things. But you've since corrected me, that's not the case. This actually is just ongoing maintenance, insurance, taxes, etc.
Yes, so the numbers that were in there were actual budgeted numbers of the last year that we were in the building. Those had some minor repairs in that for concrete and asphalt. I know there was quite a few comments that came off that, that those were inflated, that it was for repaving the whole parking lot. It was not.
Which I'll assume was my initial assumption until you had corrected me on that, which actually raises more of a concern to me that when those things do need to be taken care of, that's an even greater cost to what we're seeing here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's numbers with the building being at full capacity. So there could be some wiggle room as far as, well, maybe some house cleaning costs would go down or things like that. But it's my understanding that if the building was used for some private purposes in addition to some public purposes, then we now incur some taxes in addition to that, correct?
Yes, so the actual owning and operating numbers, when those were requested, I believe that was with previous council last year. Some of the comments came up about maybe running aging services or something like that out of the building. When the county runs those, they require us to own and operate the building, and then they would come and operate out of the building. And so that's why we used actual numbers of when we were in it. What was the second part of your comment?
But if we divide it and say leased out the bottom half to some private entities, then we have to pay property taxes on that, correct?
Yes, so what that does is anytime that we change the use of it, that it's no longer municipal use, we lose our tax exempt on that building, and so then we would be required to pay property taxes on that to the county.
So that'd be in addition to the $110,000 a year operating maintenance.
So even if we wiggled down the $110,000 a year because maybe it wouldn't be full capacity, maybe it wouldn't require certain things on there, it's offset by the fact that we have to pay property taxes on it because they were pretty substantial, as I recall.
Yeah, if I remember right, they were about 29,000 and some change.
That's what I thought. They were pretty close to 30,000.
That's all I had for you, Monty. That's all I wanted to clarify. You guys have any other questions?
Monty, I know as part of some of the previous discussions, obviously there's been the concept thrown out of going out and finding some type of renters or use for that. Mm-hmm. How much did you look into that possibility in terms of what is the real possibility of finding a single use tenant for that building versus a partial use, especially in terms of trying to keep a piece of it available for the community use? How much opportunity did you have to dive into that to see really what I guess some of the real possibilities were with that building in terms of keeping it but trying to rent some space in there to offset the ongoing O&M?
So when we started researching into that, there was 2 different companies in the area, the Salt Lake County, that we could find that did that. One of them, I'm trying to remember the name of them. The one that we researched actually had 2 buildings in the Salt Lake area that they actually had single tenant options. One of those was up in Salt Lake. The other one was I believe it was in Midvale, or up towards Cottonwood Heights. Basically is what they did was they had office spaces that were between 90 and 200 square feet. They rented those around $500 a month. That included office space, fully furnished, lobby, listing, live receptionist, internet Wi-Fi, utilities, and a conference room use of 8 hours per month per office. So we ran the numbers on those, and like I said, the one had 2 options of building space for those.
Yeah, I remember talking about those numbers. I guess my point there is I don't think there's anybody that disagrees that if we rent some of the space out, that obviously there's the potential of some revenue to help offset the O&M. I think the real question is what's the true feasibility of renting out the space, and in what type of configuration and capacity to generate some real revenue to help offset that O&M some to really make it feasible. And honestly, that's one of the biggest questions I have in my mind, and one of the biggest concerns I have in my mind. I don't disagree one bit that there is value in having additional space available to the city, to the residents for some of the many uses that have been brought up and discussed here. Some of the groups that may need spaces to meet. I think we all would love to do that, and though we don't want it to be just a dollars and cents decision, that certainly has to be a big driving factor, at least for me personally, in making that decision. And how do I truly get to the point to where I can either, one, feel like we have a true avenue to get some real revenue to help offset that and make it not a burden on the impact when we have so many other needs in the city, particularly roads and continued infrastructure, that it makes it feasible to keep. And I guess I'm really struggling to know that there is one of those real feasible options out there that isn't going to require actually additional money from the city to help manage and maintain the space, again, and provide it with some of the thing in that scenario you talked about, Monty, to provide it with some of those other things. We've repurposed all of the furniture out of that building to bring to the city hall to help lower the cost here. So we'd have to go back in and expend more money just to get, at least in that scenario you talked about, it to a place to be able to compete, at least in that market we're talking about. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
We've discussed that particular point, at length many times, going back to when this item was first appeared on the agenda to move forward, several months ago. I know that I spent a lot of time on it saying, can't we explore that more? Can't we get a realistic idea of its potential to be rented commercially, even if we were to have to incur extra costs, et cetera? Can we engage a real estate agent to look into that? And what we found out is nobody will want to without a contract saying that we're committed to doing so, which kind of ties our hands a little bit. And I know we've all had various conversations. The city's job, our core function, is to provide necessary services, not be a rental agency or a real estate broker, et cetera. And that was one of the mandates that we set out with, was we don't want to have to incur any additional staff time or cost to try to find funding sources, et cetera, for this. I know Mayor and Nicole are on the line, so Destiny, tell us if they're wanting to chime in at all. So I don't know if that kind of goes to the point that you're speaking to. We've had those conversations, but it's almost impossible to find out without moving forward and engaging someone, unless we want.
We appreciate the opportunity, but most of our comments have already been made.
Okay. Like I say, the main thing is that based on our budgeting process, the other needs we have in the city, I'm not comfortable. Obviously, we have budgeted for O&M in the building right now, but what I don't think I'm comfortable with would be to have to allocate additional funds in order to move us in that direction based on the other needs that we have in the city.
Well, and it's not a one-time allocation, right. It's an annual allocation.
It's an annual, and
we'll incur additional costs.
That's one of the real issues that I've been trying to reason through and trying to actually come up with in my head. If I could come up with an idea of how to do that. I think I would love to see some type of a building or performing arts center, if you will, something of that nature, that's in the city and for those uses. One of the challenges I think with that building is just the way it's set up. It would again take a lot of money to get it to that space, and so I realize that the cost of land and the cost of building is not going to decrease anytime soon, it seems. So those costs are going to continue to escalate. And in general, real estate is a valuable asset to have. But again, for me, I really, really struggle with those ongoing maintenance costs and what additional we may be required to have to do to try and find a feasible thing, and that's really where I struggle. I absolutely agree with some of the points that have been made tonight, and I think that something needs to be said in terms of the commitments that were made long ago, and I think those commitments were made in good faith. I think they were made with that absolute intent in place. The hard thing that comes with those commitments back there is knowing what the future truly holds. And that's the hard place to reason. And sometimes, obviously, you can look at it one way or the other, whether you're going to honor a commitment or you're going to let it be a dollars and cents decision. And I guess if you have to break it down that simply, then it has to be one or the other. And in terms of the fiscal responsibility that lies with this body and the budget and the other needs in the city, at least for me at this point, I think that would have to be the one trying to take emotion out of it, because there's certainly emotion that's part of this whole discussion. That would have to be the one that would probably weigh out for me, even though there is an emotional piece of me that's tied to this as well.
I was just going to say, which I definitely sympathize with. That's the side of town I live on. That's one of the big reasons that I'm sitting right here. Is the first month that we moved here, we got on a wagon and took a ride around the historical sites of the city, and we were showed the plaques, and this is where the black locust trees were, and this is where the fort was, and this is this farm and that farm, and we love the history. I come from that background. I'm a little bit of a history buff. That's all I read. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I might be one of the only people who's read the Historical Society's book cover to cover. I understand the history behind the plot of ground, but I have a hard time matching the sentiment with with the fiscal price tag that goes with it. And as I've kind of gone through my pros and cons, as I do with everything, I'm having a real hard time with it for several reasons. But a main one is that corner piece of property absolutely is historical and has that historical significance to the city. But the building itself isn't a historical building. It's actually relatively new, and even being relatively new, we have maintenance issues with it and struggles. We've actually been approached by owners of other actual historical buildings that were, built hundreds of years ago to have the city buy them and preserve them, and we've turned those down for the same reasons. We don't have that kind of money to put towards those things when we're telling people we can't pave dirt roads or redo a road that really has asphalt thrown over the wagon trail and needs to be redone. So I'm having a hard time with that part of it as well. But if you'll indulge me, I'll go through some of my notes because I watched the last meeting when you discussed this from pretty much my hospital bed. As I go through kind of my, I guess, I look at it as kind of my linear way of thinking is when it comes to the old building and the new building, nobody on this body made a decision on either one. Right? None of us were involved with putting the old building in place or building it or building the new building, as it were, but it does rest with us to make a decision on how to move forward. And really what I see is that this building was built to completely replace the old and look towards the future. I'm having a hard time justifying keeping the other one on pretty much sentiment when this was intended to replace it and carries a hefty price tag to do so. The direction that we gave to staff from the beginning, to Clint's point, was to look at all options. We'll explore everything, look at keeping it, look at selling it, give us options of what's the best use for the city, and I think that they've done so. I have a kind of a hard time with the timeline. I mean, it's been mentioned several times tonight in other meetings. We need more time, a year or two, or a year's $110,000 plus 2 years is $250,000. The time is kind of up, and I think I know I mentioned this in January, February when this was first brought, that we've been doing this for several years. Like that year or two has come and gone, and the clear direction was given. Fantastic. Give us ideas. Bring us some solutions. See if you can find grants. See if you can find tenants who would be willing to, etc. But really what I've seen come back is actually more cost. Give us more time to figure it out. Let's hire someone to look into those things. When it comes down to it, there is a money element to it. We definitely have to consider that. The promise, and I know we keep referring to the intent, but for those that are watching, let me read what the actual agreement says. It says, this is section 10.1, use of property. If buyer determines, buyer's the city, determines in its sole and absolute discretion that city offices at the property are no longer in buyer's best interest, the buyer shall use the property for a public and or community purpose that will promote recreational, charitable, or any other purpose that is in the interest of the public. And buyer will either name the building after the Lions Club or erect a suitable monument, memorial plaque to the Lions Club. So while I understand, again, the sentiment of what the intention of that particular council was, we're told every time we make a decision, we legally cannot bind a future council to anything, right? I mean, we're told that over and over and over. I'll further say that if that was truly the intention of that council, to put it on a future council to commit future generations to basically a higher and higher bill doesn't make much sense. It's not really fair to put on us. If that was really their intention, they should have put in some measure to fund it as well. So I have a hard time with that. When we look at the best interest of the city, and that's really this body's responsibility, is what's best for everyone. 40,000 residents growing to over 100,000. I've had just as many comments and emails from people saying, we need these other things. We need these roads replaced. We need parks built that we were promised 10 years ago. We need all this other stuff. How can we hold on to an old building that you told us you're replacing with this one? So there's competing interests in it. It's the balancing act. This one is not quite balancing evenly for me. So kind of the conclusion that I personally have come to, and let you guys speak your minds, is when it boils down to it, we are kind of out of time, and it would be, in my opinion, fiscally irresponsible of us to just hang on to it. If we had some funding mechanism to offset even some of the cost, majority of the costs, I mean, those are conversations that we've had, maybe we could justify it, but we've gone through the planning process, we've built the new building, we've been here for 6 months. It's time for us to make a decision and move forward.
Can I borrow that again? Thanks. Okay, I will speak to the promise, and I will try to be as tactful as I can. But when we enter into these agreements, it is crazy some of the legalese that is in some of these things, but it's imperative that we read. I mean, sometimes when I've looked through development agreements and things like that, I've had to reread a paragraph 800 times to go, okay, I think I really understand what they're talking about there. And then I ask this person or that person or my legal guy or things like that, because I want to really understand that when I sign off on something and I approve something, I really understand exactly what it says. I want to reread this. If buyer determines in its sole and absolute discretion that the city offices at the property are no longer in the buyer's best interest, then buyer shall use the property for a public and or community purpose. So use the property for a public or community purpose that will promote recreational, charitable, or any other purpose that is in the interest of the public. And buyer will either name the building after the Lions Club, so keep the building, name it after the Lions Club, or erect a suitable monument, memorial, or plaque to the Lions Club. So when I read that, I think, in this language, it says that we understand in the future it might not be reasonable to keep this building. So if you're not going to keep it, please at least erect a suitable monument or a plaque. And it also specifically says, and if you're not going to use it, use the money or use it for a community purpose. Now, I don't, then buyer should use the property for a public and or community purpose that will promote recreational, charitable, or any other purpose. I think my problem, that's in the best interest of the city. My problem with the language is it's wide open. Well, my point is I think that if the true intent of this was to never allow it to be sold, then the document should have said it can never be sold. It has to remain in the public. It has to remain ownership in the city forever.
Thank you. We've had public comment. Thank you.
And then I guess I take exception to the fact that we don't want to listen, because I have listened. I can't tell you how many.
I'll interject. Please keep decorum. But I think all of us take offense to the notion that we don't listen. I just spent 30 minutes explaining everything I have listened to, and what my opinion is. I'll tell you, I feel that this small group isn't listening to us, isn't listening to the rest of the community who's telling us we have a lot of other needs. So anybody else from the council have?
I just have that same comment, because I personally, and I can't speak for the other council, but I personally have had many conversations with many people about this, because wanting to make the right decision, wanting to honor the people who are in here, the people who are emotionally attached to it. I too have taken the field trips around Herriman and don't want changes, and changes are always inevitable. But I too have listened, and just because we don't elect to go exactly the way somebody wants doesn't mean we didn't listen. It just simply means that we've listened to different things, and then we have to be responsible to make a decision that we feel is in harmony with our conscience.
I'd follow that up with the fact that we've taken so many more months to make this decision, to give more time, and gave explicit instruction to bring us some solutions that we simply haven't seen any solutions, only more only more added costs, and we want more and more and more. We've had these Sherry and we've had these conversations individually and in many work meetings leading up. Is we want to find a solution, but there's only so much that a city can do. We can't provide everything for everyone. When it comes down to it, our core function is to provide the absolute basic necessity of services and then move on from there. So with that, unless we have any other comments?
No, only other comment I have is I do believe, and I have walked around this building and toured around this building, and there are spaces in this building that can accommodate small groups and large groups, and so use it. We're paying for this building. We might as well use it and get the full benefit possible. None of us voted to build it or not build it, but it's here. So let's utilize the building for the purpose it was erected for, the community to use and to be benefited by the rooms that are here.
I just have one other thought as we're contemplating this and we're talking about, a lot of emphasis has been put on history. And a point you made, Councilman Henderson, resonated with me. It's one that I have thought of before, but I hadn't for a little bit, but it resonated with me as you talked about some of the other properties that are in the city that really have a tremendous amount of historical value to them. And so I guess just a thought that I had is, obviously I would like to, at least if we do proceed down the road of looking at surplusing and selling this piece of property, I would at least like the council maybe to explore some of the options of some of those other historical sites that are within the city that have been around longer than this building and have some significance. And again, if we proceed down this road, I would just say I think that at least in terms of some of the potential money that comes off of the sale of this property, that we would at least look at trying to preserve some other form of history within the city, at least a portion of it, at least look at what our options are. It's just a thought that I have as I'm sitting here mulling over options.
I totally agree.
And looking at, once, I absolutely agree that once history is gone, it's gone in terms of significant marks and significant places in a community. You can't get them back once they've gone. And though we don't, as much as we would want to preserve every single one of them that have meaning to the history of our community, especially to be able to, for those that come after us to be able to see and how we preserve those, we don't have the money to preserve every single one of those. But I am interested in making a conscious effort where possible to preserve the significant ones. And so, again, it's just a thought after a point that you had that resonated with me, that at least if we proceed down this road, that we look at some of those other options to try and preserve something that does have significance in our community.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I love that idea. I talked to Jared because, again, this has been very troubling to me to have to make this decision. But I felt like we should make very sure that this money goes to exactly what that talks about. It goes to
those uses.
Those uses that are stated in there, that it stays for the community purpose, so that it doesn't just get utilized off in operation here, operation there, that it stays in those purposes.
The other point that I've made in previous meetings, and maybe I should reiterate again here, is, and this is just my own personal opinion, is I kind of doubt that we'll be able to sell it as quickly as some people assume, or for the price that we assume, or that would be able to be rented out for the prices that we've seen, because those are based on comparables in Salt Lake and Holiday and other places. This motion is simply allowing us to pursue whether those options are viable, right? So it doesn't mean that there's a sale pending tomorrow. It means, there's still some time to come up with some viable solutions, but this gives staff the opportunity to engage those professionals who can vet out those options for us, can tell us whether we can sell it for a decent price, can tell us whether we can rent it out or lease it to recover some of those costs, et cetera.
Right.
Do we have any other comments, discussion? Mayor, Nicole, any comments, discussion?
Not from us.
All right. I think we're ready for a motion then.
Yes.
We have to make a motion.
No, I know.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2018-19 declaring Herriman Community Center locating at 13011 South Pioneer Street as surplus. Establish a minimum bid and establish a method to determine the highest and best economic return to the city.
I'll second that with the question of what was the minimum bid that we established? Was that the appraised value?
Good point. It was 1.6.
It says to establish that.
So we need to, okay, with the minimum bid to be?
The appraised value was 1.6, right, Alan?
To answer the mayor's question.
And the method to be determined by staff possibly? For the sale of the building?
To answer the mayor's question, Monty, the appraised value is 1.6 million, is that correct?
Yeah, the appraised value that we received back in August of 16 was 1.6, well, 1,690,000.
So we need, Jackie, do we need an amended motion? Sherry's the one making the motion. Is that the minimum that you want it to be?
Establish a minimum bid, and if it's established at that, that's how much we have to have a bid for, correct?
So establish a minimum bid at the appraised value.
At the appraised value. Establish a minimum bid at the appraised value and establish a method to determine the highest and best economic return to the city.
Is that sufficient? To have a motion? Do we still have a second, Nicole?
Yeah, that was the mayor.
The mayor.
That was the mayor.
Yeah, so
right.
yes, I second that.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, Nicole?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Yes. The motion passes. And that completes the discussion action items for tonight's meeting. Item number 7, calendar, future meetings and events. May 16th will be a special city council work meeting as we will all be attending a conference the following week, which is our normally planned and scheduled meeting. So we've all agreed to have another meeting next week to continue with the business that needs to be done. May 17th is planning commission meeting at 7. The 23rd I mentioned is canceled. June 6th will be a special city council work meeting. May 17th, as was mentioned earlier by several of our residents who spoke during the public comment portion, the Herriman Community Suicide Prevention Meeting will be held here at City Hall at 6 p.m.
Councilman, yeah, that's a change of venue to Copper Mountain Middle School.
Copper Mountain Middle School, not City Hall. So it's still 6 p.m. at Copper Mountain Middle School. Thank you very much. Then we have May 19th, Pedalpalooza. May 28th, the Memorial Day breakfast, Main Street Park. May 28th, Memorial Day ceremony at Herriman City Cemetery. June 1st and 2nd, Fort Herriman Days, PRCA Rodeo. Do we need to go to closed session?
We do not need to tonight. I got the word. So I will make a motion that we adjourn the regular city council meeting and reconvene in our work meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.